Welcome to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast, hosted by Dawn Tura, CEO and President of SIG.
Well, folks, my name is Dawn Tura, President and CEO of SIG, and I am so excited to introduce you to Matt Fringeli. Now, Matt, welcome to the studio, and thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Dawn. Pleasure to be here.
So, folks, let me tell you a little bit about Matt. So we've been working within the recruitment and staffing for 19 years, and he's tenured just under 2 years with TekWissen, which is one of our favorite SIG members, and he joined them in 2020. Now, as managing director, Matt has accountability for building and managing the organization's global strategic partnerships. In this role, he's also responsible for the profit and loss and management of the global business development team and delivery to TekWissen's largest customer engagements and overseeing a diverse and talented teams in both North America, UK, and India. Now, prior to TekWissen, Matt worked 17 years with the Legis Group, another one of our favorite, and Accenture. During this period, he gained experience in recruitment and staffing operations, professional services, global projects, and supply chain management. He's also developed a reputation as an expert for deploying new programs into new markets across EMEA, APAC, and India. His success and his success and expertise in global expansions has led to Matt's promotion to Implementation Director for AGS in 2014, and again in 2017 to lead the global supply chain management function for AGS. He then worked at Accenture in 2019 to lead global MSP and VMS project deployments. Now, Matt has diversity of skills and global delivery experience, and we're going to get into that a little bit more detail, Matt, that helps him deliver consistent world-class staffing and IT solutions to TekWissen's global client base. Matt has also achieved a Master's of Science Human Resource Management degree from the University of Maryland, University College, but not before graduating from Frostburg State University with a Bachelor of Science in Mass Communications. So, Matt, I am so excited to get into today's the details about who you are and what you do. But before we get started, we do have a quick break for a word from our sponsor. When we return, we will hear from our guest, Matt Fringeli from TekWissen.
What is SIG University? We are an inclusive, internationally recognized university whose mission is to advance the procurement profession while enabling students to transform their careers through our world-class certifications. SIG University offers industry-recognized certifications programs, each offering a unique set of competencies and skills that sourcing and risk professionals need to be successful. The programs provide advanced training in subjects like strategic sourcing, supplier management, third-party risk management, intelligent automation, and more. SIG University is committed to academic excellence, which is why our students are trained alongside an international cohort, engage in discussion forums, and learn from senior practitioner faculty who leverage their deep industry experience with real-world case studies. Why SIG University? It was created originally at the request of SIG members. We knew there was a lot of training out there, but nothing designed around the ever-evolving skills and competencies that the modern sourcing and risk professional needs. The program was created through collaborating with dozens of industry experts to create a curriculum that is bold, fresh, and applicable to this day and age. If you're looking to advance your knowledge and your career, join us at SIG University.
So, Matt, a couple of things I'd love to talk about. And so, working in the staffing industry, I'd love to talk about the trends, the great resignation, talent shortage, wage inflation, but I'm really flexible if there are other things that you want to share with our audience today. So how does that sound? Do you want to get started with that?
Sounds great, Dawn. Let's do it.
Okay, so I don't need to point out, you're probably of the younger generation that is really a large part of this great resignation. Can you maybe talk about how you see the great resignation and the impact it has on staffing?
Yeah, certainly, but I don't think I'm as young as you think, but
you wear it well.
that I'll take. Thank you very much. Yeah, as you indicated, I've been in this industry for 20 years, or just short of it. But I've seen a lot of the different trends. I mean, when I first came into the industry, certainly, in the early 2000s, we were coming out of a different kind of recession, and out of that dot-com bubble bust and everything in the early 2000s. And so the market was quite down. Of course, then we went through the 2008 financial crisis and the market went down. So this is, not new, of course. We all know trends, every, 5, 6, 8, sometimes 10 years. Most recently, you go on a, an uptick. So this is, again, not a new phenomenon by any stretch, but this one is different, in many ways, because of how quickly it rebounded and what that actually meant for a lot of not just, companies, but staffing partners like us. All staffing companies are feeling the effects of the phenomenon. When COVID first hit, we saw mass layoffs, economic shutdowns. Everyone's well aware of that. But when the demand came back, it was really only a couple months later, and it surged, right? And everyone hears about the V-shaped recovery. And that's really what, we're talking about is it dropped completely. And then within probably, 4 or 5 months, it was, right on the way back up. And when that happened, there was 2 distinct things that I've seen as a result of that fast rebound. First, there were a lot of highly skilled people that were in the job market, and they quickly became employed again because they may have lost their jobs with some of those layoffs, but they didn't last around. They didn't stick around long in the open market. And then second, the people that were not impacted by layoffs realized that they actually had more opportunities open to them as a result of the remote work that was available. And in some cases, they might have felt less loyal to their current employer because they had seen, some of their friends, colleagues, and others go through some of these layoffs. They might have been one of the fortunate ones, but they realized, this could happen to me as well. So it got them thinking, okay, what else is out there? And this might have made them interested in new opportunities, or at least take a look around and see what other companies were offering in terms of better pay, better benefits, things of that nature.
So Matt, let me ask a question though. When you say, we know about the layoffs, but did people did they lay off all their temp workers as well, or staff augmentation, contingency labor?
Yeah, absolutely, Dawn. It was pretty rough, as for us, and I'm sure most staffing companies, the contingent work was no different than, and in some cases might have been the first thing that they kind of looked at and sort of took a broad measure to close out those opportunities because it was easier for them in many ways, right? Of course, when you have a full-time employee, there's other factors that they have to consider, such as paying out, different benefits. Certainly, they have to cover the unemployment insurance. With temp workers, they're not on the hook for any of that stuff, so they can just say, hey, we're done. We're ending the assignment early. So yeah, we saw quite a large layoff and the revenue dipped, pretty dramatically for us in those couple of months from March to June, July of 2020.
That surprises me in some ways. Yes and no. I understand the reason. It's easier to let go of a temp worker than it is an FTE, but most companies can't exist without their temp workers anymore. They've become so reliant on the ability to staff up and staff down as they need to. So that must have been a big hit to a lot of the companies as well, and a shock to a lot of your folks.
It certainly was, and you're right. Companies are very reliant on temp workers, and you can look at a lot of data points that are out there that many companies are, upwards of 40-50%, contract workers in many shapes or forms. So you're right. And even with my time at Accenture, seeing how embedded and ingrained Accenture is in a lot of these companies around the world, those projects and those things really got paused or shut down as well from, keeping in contact with some of my former colleagues there. So a lot of them, a lot of the consultants over there really weren't sure if they were going to be impacted by layoffs. And I think fortunately, most of them were not. But, it just goes to show you that something as dramatic as COVID, that was as unforeseen as COVID, can certainly throw a lot of wrinkles into plans that companies have. And that flexible workforce is there for that reason. It's flexible. And if something like this happens, that's an easy sort of measure to take is move off some of those contract workers and contract positions.
So tell me, TekWissen is a little bit different as far as staffing. Tell me about the types of people that you staff, and where do you have a sweet spot that you'd like to brag about a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. As you'd probably guess with the name TekWissen, we do sit in the IT market. So a lot of skilled technical positions, not just IT, but also engineering. We do a lot of professional staffing as well. So, for us, the sweet spot really would fall within, really, when you look at the STEM, that part of the, well, I shouldn't say economy, but that part of the workforce, that part of education, right? So people with those kind of backgrounds is really where we do our best work. So the clients we work with range from, highly technical companies to, financial companies and banks and different things, to pharmaceutical companies, med device. That's where we find we're staffing a lot of our talent, just because of the types of people that they're looking for. We really specialize in helping attract.
So, it's interesting to think that people with a STEM education or that kind of background, they're so employable. So does that mean that they have more flexibility by working through a system like yours, where they take an assignment, they take some time off? Is that what you're seeing? Is that how their rhythm typically works? So tell me about a typical worker that you might hire.
Yeah, in many cases, a lot of folks in that industry are happy to move from project to project. I think when they measure all things out and they look at certain factors of what a full-time position can offer, certainly there are a good chunk of those people that are still looking to latch on somewhere permanent and full-time, and they'll use a platform like a staffing company to maybe, leverage that to get plugged into an opportunity, to where they might, realize, hey, this person's a great employee and there's a longer term need. So maybe they can stick it out and they'll get transitioned into a full-time employee. So we've seen plenty of that, but on the flip side, we do also work with a lot of really strong people who are happy to be flexible, and they get excited about moving from one project to a next, working at a lot of, cutting edge companies doing cutting edge work. So after their sort of, 1-2 year project is complete, they're looking to go on to the next thing. They don't want to get stuck and get, quote unquote, stagnant somewhere and go, oh, I'm just doing the same old. Like, they really want to keep moving on to that next exciting project. So we do see a little bit of both. And in reality, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the Great Resignation, I mean, there were a lot of positives and negatives that came out of that, for us as a staffing company, because we have the benefit of our customers requiring more support to fill more of their positions. And we've seen a lot more open requirements from not only existing customers, but we've received the opportunity to work with, many new clients who are struggling to fill positions either on their own or with other partners that they may have had. So, that's been a real benefit for us. But the flip side of that is, like we were just speaking about, these candidates now have a lot more opportunity than ever. They have the ability to weigh multiple jobs and multiple opportunities, look at all the pros and cons before making a decision. And that could be whether they want to take another contract role. That could be whether they want to, go into a full-time position. But the ability to remain as a hybrid employee versus working in an office environment has opened the door for so many of these people, that didn't want to relocate. Maybe they have a skill set and they live, I'm based on the East Coast. Maybe they're, in Washington, D.C. in this market, and they wanted to work for Apple in California, and they didn't want to relocate and live in, the Bay Area. They don't have to now, right? And a lot of these companies are very open to wherever the person is, let them stay there. And, we've all seen that remote work can certainly still be very productive and allow us to still be very flexible in, deadlines and getting work done and working off hours or whatever. I mean, there is no 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 workday anymore, right? People are willing to, if I'm on the East Coast, to work, later in the afternoon if I'm working for a West Coast company, or vice versa, wake up earlier and work in the morning for, East Coast company, if that was the case. So, that's a lot of the opportunity that these folks are seeing. And it's sort of become almost a benefit, right? Or a pseudo benefit or a perk that a lot of these people don't want to give up anymore. So if clients are starting to become, I don't think anyone's becoming super rigid yet about return to office, but those that are starting to think about it more and starting to put policies in place saying, hey, in Q1 of 2022 or whatever, we're going to require people to be in the office full-time or part-time. I think some of those candidates are going to get dissuaded by that and be, maybe not as excited about it, and they'll keep holding back for these companies that are going to continue allowing full-time remote work. So that's just one of those additional things we got to think about.
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but were most of your workers remote before the pandemic, or did a lot of them go on site?
No, almost none were remote. I mean, sure, there was probably a very small percentage, but most clients that we were supporting and are still our clients today were very much, we want somebody on site in whatever location the position was. And we support clients all around the world, 7 different countries and across, all of the United States. So, we're not talking about just one location or one client. We're talking a lot of different areas. Most of them were pretty rigid. And it was kind of that mentality of, you need to be where the work is and you need to be with your team or on site with your manager. And that was just the way it was.
I guess I always thought that staff augmentation and contingency labor, we had much more flexibility always. I never realized that you put most of your people on site.
Still mostly on site. I mean, there are some people who would be in what I would call like a travel position where they might not necessarily sit on site, 100% of the time, but they were still traveling to a client facility, upwards to 50% of the time. But really, Dawn, I think the vast majority of it, you would probably look at 90+% that were in positions where they sat on site.
So the Great Resignation in some ways is, in a positive way, the perfect storm for you, because people got disenchanted and during the pandemic and resigned from their organizations. They realized that remote work was available. So they go to work for someone like you, and now the place they left is short-staffed again. So that's absolutely perfect, because do you have a talent shortage like most organizations do for FTEs?
I mean, there are absolutely a talent shortage, and not just with the clients we work with on the contingency side, because we also do support some clients in finding direct placement, for FTE positions, and that is vast. I mean, again, certain highly skilled positions, it's just tough to find the people because, now that we've kind of worked through the Great Resignation, and in many extents is people that maybe had switched jobs or switched roles early on in the process, for the most part, they've probably found something that they're happy with. Maybe they found that higher paying job or that job that offers better benefits, better perks, whatever it was that they were looking for. They probably found it in the last 12 months. And they're probably now not looking to make another move, unless there's something there that they're just unhappy about. But that's a small percentage of that total workforce population. Most of them are probably well engaged and are looking to stay where they are for the foreseeable future. And so that's where that talent shortage comes in. And there's only so many things that, clients can do to, really combat that, because you can't just train up a bunch of new people on skills that, you need somebody to come in with a certain skill set or a certain knowledge base and be ready to kind of go hit the ground running. That also takes a lot of time. That could take 6 months, 12 months, even a year, depending on what kind of skills you're trying to train them for. And then similarly, you can only incentivize them so much with additional benefits, additional pay. But at some point, the wage inflation aspect of that is really what we've seen as another side effect of the overall Great Resignation.
So tell me more about that, because I keep hearing about the inflationary wages, and I know within sourcing expertise, which of course is what I track, we've seen a dramatic increase upward of 20%. But what do you see for inflationary wage rates?
Yes, I mean, percentage is hard to kind of pinpoint exactly, because it will vary by the types of skills you're looking for and obviously the market that they're in and whatnot. But it's certainly been something that it's just really been eye-opening for me personally, having been in the industry for so long, and especially having worked on the MSP side of the business, where so many of the MSP partners have goals where they're trying to save their clients money. And that's one of the benefits of having an MSP program, is you can track all the information and you can look at how much you're paying, for like positions in different markets and in the same market, and, make sure that you're paying fair wages. But the evaluation that's had to occur has been, again, pretty eye-opening to just to kind of say it again. It's like, many cases, somebody who was earning, or a client that was saying, hey, we want to pay $100K for a certain position, now they can't find people who are even willing to consider it for that price. So I've seen some clients increase salaries by 10 to 30%, and depending on, again, on what those skill sets are for roles that are already fairly highly compensated positions. And those that aren't necessarily making those changes, they're making different changes. If they're saying, hey, we're set on our budget, we can't change how much we can pay. If they were looking for 8 years of experience before, now maybe they're cutting that down to 3 or 4 years of experience and keeping that rate at what it was for those higher, longer tenured people, higher skilled people. So that's, a couple of the things that we're seeing, but the pressure doesn't go away. These skilled professionals, as we talked about before, they have the ability to shop offers between different companies. And with that remote work increasing their opportunities and options, they can always choose the higher paying position if everything else in their mind is equal.
So go down a bunny trail with me. The baby boomer generation is now retiring out of the workforce for the most part. And probably the youngest baby boomers, and I don't know what percentage of baby boomers that makes up, probably have another 5 years in the workforce. So that workforce is going away, and that was the largest employed workforce. Now I understand millennials will make up the largest number of workers in the workforce. So is the talent shortage that the people with a lot of experience are retiring out of the system right now, and the millennials haven't had time to get the experience? Is that one of the reasons we have this delta and a labor shortage? I mean, it just came to me that might be one of the reasons. So I'm just going to pick your brain, since I've got a smart person on the other side of the screen with me.
Yeah, it's certainly that is a factor in all of it. But the other part of it is a lot of these technical skill sets in the STEM space are just skills that, unfortunately, there's not as many people going after those types of degrees and certifications, or they might have it, but they might not be specialized in a certain type of technology, using data science and data analytics as an example. I mean, that's a whole industry in and of itself within IT that, before the Facebooks and all the social media companies of the world, you really didn't hear about data and all that kind of information out there and what people want to do with it and data science. I mean, of course it existed, but the amount of companies who are now working on trying to, create solutions and figure out, how to do more with the data that they have, has exploded. And there just aren't enough practitioners in that space. So for somebody to go into a company as a data scientist, if that company says, hey, we're looking for somebody with 8 years of experience, unless they started, back in 2012, 2010, they're just not going to have it. And so unfortunately, you have a lot of companies looking for this person or these people with 8-10 years of experience in some of these roles, a senior position, and there's only so few of them out there. So that's part of that.
And they command big wages. I tell you, I was talking with a gentleman. He has a PhD in mathematics. He has 8 years of experience, like you said, and he can command $500,000 a year in payroll. And I've got a book over here. I should pull it out. It's called Data Science for Dummies. And I was a math major. Granted, it was a while ago. I actually am lost, and I'm only in the 3rd chapter. And I'm lost as a math major. I can't even imagine, but you're right. It's a skill set that was never emphasized when I went through school to do data science. We didn't have big data. We didn't have the analytical needs. So it is crazy when you think about something so technical in nature.
You're right. And good for you for being a math major, because, that whole concept is lost on me. It's just not something that I was ever really strong in. I was much more prone to, to do well in some of the social sciences than the physical sciences and math. But that being said, I mean, that's just one example, Dawn, of what, is happening out there, because some of these other skills in, application development and the types of programming languages that exist, these things change all the time, right? AI, machine learning, again, all skills that have really come onto the scene in the last 8 to 10 years and exploded. And again, most companies are looking for ways to automate things, looking for ways to do things with less humans involved, right? And then there are a lot of benefits to that, of course, for a company. But unfortunately, there just aren't enough practitioners out there in that space. So I think, going back to your original question on the millennials and the Gen Z that's coming into the workforce, I think you will find a lot of the younger generation that is learning these skills and is going through studying and understanding how to get into the workforce and take them on, but they just don't have the requisite experience that we talked about. And the other factor is on the flip side with the boomers is they have a lot of great skills and are able to do a lot of high level things, but some of those technologies have changed so rapidly that what they learned and the skills that they had and they built a career on have almost evaporated. It's not that they don't need them anymore, but they're just less sought after. So there's sort of this gap where you have the perfect storm, the younger generation without the experience that they need yet, but they understand the stuff. And then this older generation that's retiring that has a lot of great skills, but they also don't have the skills in these newer technologies. And they probably don't want to, spend a whole lot of time learning it if they're a handful of years away from retiring as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you see is it going to be when the digitization of our businesses gets to a high enough level that the workforce level in our digitization means that we'll finally have enough workers and a labor shortage, or the talent shortage will be corrected? Or do you see it as an uphill battle for a number of years?
I don't think it's an overnight thing, but I also don't think that it's something that's going to to drag on forever. I do think a couple things will happen, and this is just me, predicting, right? Yeah. This is not coming from anywhere in particular, but I do feel that everything that's happened as a result of the Great Resignation and the job market and the economy having bounced back so quickly from what we saw initially when COVID hit, is there has to be some stabilization across the market in general. And with that stabilization, in the job market, you'll find that people are, companies will kind of settle into where they are with the talent that they have, and they'll resume sort of a normal pace of projects. So I don't think that it's going to take forever for that to happen. And to me, I feel like the continued rise of the job recovery, can't continue at the same pace it has for the last 6 to 12 months. It's going to start to flatten out in many ways. And once that happens, right, we get back into kind of a pre-COVID job market where people will be ready to move on and people will be looking for that next opportunity. The wages will most likely have also come to some sort of normalization, right? This continued spike for high wage positions or positions seeing 10, 20, 30% increases in pay will also start to normalize a little bit. So those things I feel like will happen at some point in 2022. And as that starts to happen, that will also lend itself well to just a stabilization of the talent shortage. You'll find companies becoming more flexible with looking at some of these, younger folks who are just coming into the job market, realizing that, maybe we don't need a senior level person. Maybe we can hire a more junior person and take some time and train them and take some time and help them develop a skill set. Or let's look at our internal team where we have people already working on some of these projects. Maybe one of those projects ends and we can now allow this person who was working on that to get involved in a new project and upskill or reskill themselves into one of these other more critical functions that we need in our company. So you'll see a lot of that. And I think companies that spend time working with their internal employees and trying to help upskill and reskill them will fare a lot better in the short term than those who are going to sort of hold out looking for that what we call in our industry the purple squirrel or the unicorn. Everybody wants that one that probably doesn't really exist, but they have this magical mix of all the right skills and tenure and experience. Those companies that continue holding on looking for that one perfect person, may struggle to fill the work or get their work done.
Interesting. Well, I just want to congratulate you two on your new headquarter building over in India. I saw, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And you guys are growing by leaps and bounds. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we're quite proud of it. The building is amazing. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it because all those plans were delayed as a result of COVID, of course. But hopefully next year, before we get too far into the year and now that travel is sort of becoming possible again, I'll get over there. And Manish actually just it went over. He's over there for the entire month of December. So it's nice that we're able to start doing that again. And the building is beautiful. I can't wait to see it in person myself.
Yeah, I follow Manish and we talk quite a bit. I have to tell you, the founders of your company, your bosses, your leaders are incredible. And everyone at SIG is a huge fan of the brothers and of the company. So I want to congratulate you. You left a great company, but you certainly joined a great company as well.
I couldn't agree with you more, Don. I mean, I've met, the brothers during my time with Allegis through, an introduction that I got from Bruce Morton, who I know you also know well. Mm-hmm. And, this is going back in 2016, 17, but I got introduced to them and immediately, I sort of knew what you just referenced. Like there was just a different vibe to how they worked and how they operated. And it was always intriguing to me and exciting to me. So just over the years, as I was, looking at different opportunities and looking at different moves, it just worked out great. These guys, came to me and said, "Hey, talk to me about what they were doing with the business and where they, some of that growth that you just mentioned and what they were expecting and where they thought maybe I could fit in." And honestly, it was a no-brainer. It was something that I was quite excited to get involved in, and just knowing how they operated and seeing the vision that they had for the business. So I couldn't be happier with having been here for the last couple of years and looking forward to the future.
Thank you. So you mentioned the magic squirrel, but have you heard Manish's story about the squirrel? The real squirrel, the physical squirrel?
I don't know that I have. I'm trying to think about that. I've heard there's a lot of great stories that he's told me, but I don't recall one about a squirrel.
So we were down in La Costa in San Diego. No, we were down in Orlando, and it has a magic river, one of those things that you float in. And we were having an event on one of the pool decks. And while we were there, a squirrel attempted to cross over the river and fell in. And so, of course, a bunch of people started screaming because the poor squirrel started to drown and couldn't get out because the river current was keeping it moving and he couldn't get to the other side. Manish, in his gorgeous suit that he always wears, jumped in, shoes, socks, suit, into the magic river and got a little tray of some sort that one of the waiters handed him and lifted the squirrel out and onto the edge to make sure it was going to be alive, and then came out soaking wet and stayed for the rest of the reception.
Wow. Now, I'm not surprised by anything that you told me on that story, because Manish is a huge animal lover, and if you know Manish at all, you realize that very quickly. But just the vision of him jumping into a pool to save the squirrel is and I'm surprised I haven't heard the story, to be honest with you. I mean, that's amazing. It's hilarious all at the same time. I'm sure in the moment it wasn't funny.
You're proud to know him. Yeah, it's like what a great guy he is. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, no, I appreciate you telling me that, and I'm going to have to give him a hard time for saying, why hasn't he told me that story yet? That's
I know.
That's a really good one. There's another
he
one.
endeared himself to everyone at the summit after that. Everybody was talking about the guy who saved the squirrel and shaking his hand, going out of their way to find him. And of course, all of the SIG and SIGlets were all so excited that the squirrel lived and scampered off into the woods. So anyways, that's the kind of person you work for. So I just thought I'd share that as a nice way to wrap up our time together today.
That's great. And I mean, again, not that none of that surprises me, because I've seen some of those very kind acts of humanity, in many other ways and shapes and forms through Manish, not just Manish, but just our entire company. We're still small enough to the point where, that culture and that footprint or that fabric that's kind of there is really felt across everyone that works here, which is kind of amazing, right? I mean, and as a company grows, you always hope to keep that culture intact. But we're in a really special and sweet spot, I think, right now as an organization, because we're adding the right people, and everyone that we're adding to our organization comes from that same background and mindset. And I think we're all just it's just a lot of good people with good minds and good hearts. So it's exciting and it's a fun place to be.
Oh, great. Well, I'm sorry that we're out of time today, but Matt, I would love to invite you back again. It's been so great just going down our little bunny trails and having the conversations about the future.
Likewise, Dawn, I really enjoyed the opportunity to chat with you today, and certainly would be welcome to join you again if the opportunity presents itself.
Great. So folks, I'm speaking with Matt Fringeli from TekWissen. If you don't know him, get connected with him, find him on LinkedIn, make him part of your own personal network. And Matt, for sure, I want to stay in touch with you.
Sounds great, Don. We will do it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining the podcast today. And folks, please make sure you listen to another episode very soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Want to nominate someone for an interview? Email us at info@sig.org.